Small children were killed at a water distribution point in central Gaza over the weekend, shot. These are people's babies, shot while trying to get water because they are thirsty, because their homes and infrastructure have been systematically obliterated as collective punishment to civilians for the actions of Hamas. Now, this time Israel admitted it. They say they were targeting an Islamic Jihad terrorist, but the strike, this is a direct quote, fell dozens of meters from the target. Now, I know a tiny bit about guns. I don't think they work like that. If you shoot in one direction, they don't fall dozens of meters away. That's not how weapons work. It feels to me like saying fell dozens of meters from the target is their way of saying we missed and civilians die. But trust us, we were aiming for someone else. Is there any plausible reading where that phrase makes sense, where we can accept that? Joining us today is James Robbins. He's the author of Blowing Everything Up is Beautiful, Israel's Extermination of Gaza. Thank you so much for joining us. So, James, what is your read of this? Is there any way we could accept this as anything other than direct targeting of innocent civilians?
Look, all militaries in the world operate under what's called a principle of proportionality. So that's how many civilians you're allowed to kill, or you allow yourself to kill. Now, the IDF has given itself a proportionality principle of anywhere between 20 and 30 civilians for every low-ranking member of Hamas that it targets. For even higher-ranking members of Hamas, that number goes up to even 300. Now, to put this in context, when the United States took out Osama bin Laden, they allowed a non-combat casualty cutoff value of 30. So, in a sense, even if the IDF did make a mistake with this strike, their rules and their guidelines and their rules of engagement really allow them to kill dozens of civilians at a time. And this has gone on for 20 months now. And this, this massacre is just one massacre on top of a giant mountain of them. Massacres like these happen almost every single day in Gaza. Some of them are accidents. Surely most of them are not.
Right. And so Israel is saying that the incident is under review, but after they killed 15 medics and denied it, and then video evidence showed that they did, in fact, execute them, they called it a, quote, professional failure. So given the propaganda spin on every civilian death that's outrageous, what can we expect from this review?
Very little. I mean, there's a very, very good human rights group in Israel called B'Tselem, and they gave up referring cases to the Israeli judicial system, I think in 2016, which is almost 10 years ago now. And they stopped referring cases to the Israeli judicial system because the conviction rate for Israeli soldiers who had killed, who had abused, who had tortured Palestinian detainees, Palestinian civilians, were never tried. The conviction rate is so low as to not matter at all. Look, the Israeli government, the Israeli military continues to carry out these massacres because they are allowed to do so by the United States. The only country in the world that could possibly stop what is going on in Gaza right now is the United States, is the American president, which is a slightly terrifying thing because that means that the whole system of international law, international norms has been completely broken, been completely wrecked. It is as ruined as the Gaza Strip is right now.
Now, I think we should remind ourselves why the Palestinians don't have food and water. We learned from what I thought was a shocking report from a group called Breaking the Silence, a report called The Perimeter, detailed how they systematically destroyed homes, agricultural land, factories, and infrastructure along the Gaza border in order to make sure that the civilians could not ever fend for themselves or live independently. So this idea that they don't have water is no accident, right?
No accident at all. It's a deliberate policy. That report from Breaking the Silence is an incredibly good report. It relies on the testimony of IDF soldiers who, given anonymity, have spoken about their experiences, and not only the destruction and demolition that takes place within that buffer zone, but also the random killings that IDF soldiers are allowed to engage in. They can shoot anyone on sight. If they are male, they are classed as a terrorist, and if they are female or a girl or a child, then who cares? It goes much further than just the demolitions and the ruining of farmland and so on, greenhouses within that buffer zone. Look, 80%, probably higher now, of Gaza's residential stock, its houses and its apartment buildings, have been systematically ruined. As you mentioned before, there was an 11-week siege in which no fuel, no food, no aid, no medicine, not even an aspirin, was allowed into the Gaza Strip. And the world hasn't seen urban hunger this extreme and concentrated since the siege of Leningrad ended in 1944. That's pretty shocking. Now, when the Israelis lifted this siege, I think at the end of May, if I remember rightly, Bezalel Smotrich, the Israeli finance minister and the most extreme right-wing member of the government, got up and said, look, we're not releasing the siege out of our own good graces. We're not doing it out of our own beneficence. We're doing it so that the world stops accusing us of violations of the Genocide Convention, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. We're doing it so that the United States continues to act as our patron, as our armorer, and as our legal linebacker. When somebody in the Israeli government gets up and says that out loud, that's impunity in operation.
Right.